When is the best time to sell? Stay tuned and I'll let you know.
You better get fired up.
I'm fully committed to bloopers in the openings from now on. I feel like I've been doing it 50% of the time. So when is the best time to sell? I get that question all the time, right? People will bring up two big things, right? The first one, the one that I hear the most often is we've got all these snowbirds coming down. And they usually come, maybe October, November, somewhere around there. And they stay until the snow thaws, maybe March, April, somewhere around there. That's got to be the best time, right? And then I get other people that say, hey, a lot of these parents, locals, they want to get their house sold and into their next home during the summer months where they don't have to worry about school or anything else. So we've got to be in that summer period. That's got to be the best 3-month period to sell, right? What I thought I would do is show you actual stats over the last couple of years of Port St. Lucie single family home sales, right? There's really two things you want to consider. Everybody's thinking sales, right? If there's 400 sales in January, but there's 600 sales in July, July's got to be a better time to sell. That's not necessarily true because you've got to take another number into consideration, and that is the active listings on the market. So if you've got 400 sales, but you've only got 400 homes on the market, that's way better than 600 sales with 1,200 homes on the market. One is a 1-month inventory, right? We're selling 400 homes a month. And oh, by the way, we've only got 400 listings. So we're going to go through all of them in a month. The other one, you've got 600 homes, more sales, right? But we've got 1,200 to sell. It's going to take us 2 months, twice the time to get it sold. So you want to look at that inventory number, right? The way I run inventory, you can do a 30 or a 60 or a 90 day. I do a 45 day, meaning I look back at the last 45 days of sales and I jot down that number. And then I look at how many we've currently got on the market. And then I do the math to determine if we sold at that rate we sold at over the last 45 days, how long would it take to get rid of all this current active inventory? And then that tells us what our inventory rate is, right? If you really wanted to look and see when the best time to sell was, it would be when that inventory is the lowest. Now, that said, we've got two cycles. I don't even want to say two. We've really got, there's unlimited cycles, but I would say the biggest cycles, I'm thinking of three. Number one, you've got the normal Florida cycle where it starts to pick up about April, right? Sales. And then it kind of peaks out in July or August, and then it starts coming down. And then the winter is the coldest months, both in temperature and in sales. But then you've got another cycle of people watching rates. So when rates go up, sales come down. When rates come down, sales go up. Then you've got the spike of Homes for Heroes, right? When that program would come out, all of a sudden, poof, you had a huge influx of buyers, which meant a huge influx of sales. Okay, so that was another layer. Then you've got home prices compared to the average income locally. All right. We can have the hottest market on the planet where homes are selling, prices are going up. But if they go high enough, and the average income just will not support a payment on that price, it just doesn't matter anymore. People aren't going to buy. They can't afford it. So a lot of people argued, oh, prices are too high when the median was 300 grand here. Prices are too high when the median went up to 350. Prices are too high when buyers' incomes disallow them from purchasing. And what we found here was that number right now is $430,000. That's the median price point in Port St. Lucie. It's gone up considerably in just the 6-7 years that I've been here, right? So where those prices are, that's another layer. So if I were to tell you as a seller, hey, traditionally your best time is going to be, April to September, that's based off sales only. And it's literally, it's only looking at sales. It's not looking at active inventory. And it's also not taken into consideration where prices have gone in consideration with median income. And it's also not taking into consideration what rates have done. And it's also not taking into consideration whether we've got programs like Homes for Heroes on the market. So you've got a lot to contend with. Now, all that said, I want to pull up some data just so you can kind of see what it's looked like over the last almost 2 years. All right. So every single Monday, my team pulls these stats and we take a look at them. So here are the stats that I've pulled since the beginning of last year, right? 2024. And it actually goes back further because you can see we've got column B and column O. There's some 2023 stats in there as well. But I want to show you 1 year. Man, it's going to be hard to, I don't want to open up these cells, right? I've got the first Monday of every quarter, right? So O is the first Monday of the first quarter. AB is the first Monday of the second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter. Then when you get into the current year, I break it down by the first Monday of the month, okay? So you can see if you were just looking at sales, which is right here, you can see there's 442 sales in January. Well, this January, there were 398, quite a bit less. And the market is a little softer this year, right? In April, it was 524. April of this year, it was 521. So our January was weak, but all of a sudden in April, we were back in business. We were matching the 2024 sales numbers. Now, in July, it was 590. July over here, it was 526. So we didn't get that continued escalation that we usually see, and we did see in 2024. And then it tapered off down to 545 in October. Well, this October, I got to move a hair over, we're at 542, which is almost the same. So we did get a really weak first quarter, and we didn't get that giant third quarter that we're used to seeing. But our second and fourth quarters were almost identical, right? So we're just seeing a more plateaued year than we're used to seeing. And that's, again, going back to all those variables I spoke to. And those are just the biggest variables that I see. I guarantee there's other variables I'm not seeing or I'm not thinking about. There's other variables that are in play, but they're a much more minor variable. They have lesser impact. But again, that's the question that most sellers are asking is, where are sales? But you also need to take into consideration this row up here, row 4. Actives. That's your competition. That's how many different homes you're competing against, right? That was the example of 400 on, 400 sold versus 1,200 on, 600 sold. 600 is bigger than 400, so you would think, oh, more sales, that's a better time to sell. But if inventory is at 1,200 versus 400, no, it's actually a worse time to sell. So actives, again, 1,388 at the first of the year. Where were we this year? 1,742. What's that? Roughly 350 more-ish? That's quite a bit. That's not quite 30%, but I would bet it's maybe 25-ish%. First of April, there were 1,556. This year, 2,119. That is not quite 50%, but it's 600, and that's probably not quite 40% either. But I bet it's 35%. That's a huge increase. July was 1,627. This year it was 1,940. And the 1st of October was 1,720. This year, it's 1,912. Okay? So you can see that this year has more inventory than last year. It's not going to be as easy to sell this year, especially when sales are in second and fourth quarter, they're roughly the same. In the first and third quarter, they're actually down. So sales are down a little bit, depending upon when you're looking through the year, but inventory is considerably higher. So how does that impact your ability to sell? That's where you need to look at row 12. Okay, so we've got for the first of last year, 141 days of inventory. What does that mean? That means if we look at the fact that we've got 1,388 homes for sale, and we sell 442 every 45 days, it would take 141.3 days to sell out of all that inventory, assuming we didn't take on any new inventory and we sold at that last 45-day rate. That's what that means. So to say that, hey, the snowbird months are the best months, well, here it kind of supports it, right? January, 141 days. October, 142 days. Oh, I'm sorry. It's the opposite. It doesn't support it because in the April, you've got 133, and in July, you got 124. Actually, the best time to sell, we're only looking at 4 days throughout the year, but the best time to sell was the beginning of that third quarter, right? But it was pretty consistent. The difference between 124 and 142, right? The worst quarter and the best quarter is what, 16, 17, 18 days? 18 days. Now let's keep column 12 highlighted and look over here, right? We're going from 124 to 142 to 197 in January. And it got worse. Look at February, 274 days. I remember this time I was thinking, holy smokes, the market is plummeting. But it was short term. The next month it came back to 242, then it came back to 143, right? If we look at all of these numbers, lower, 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 now it went up September 15th. So the best time, and I know we're not looking at every single Monday, but the best time that we're looking at was the 8th of September with 154 days. That is where we kind of hit the rock bottom, which is great for sellers. That number is still higher than every single one of the 4 first quarters or first Mondays of each quarter of last year. Okay. So this year is unquestionably more challenging to sell than last year. Dramatically more challenging? Well, I would say probably from January to April it was, but now it's getting a little bit better. And you can break that down even further, right? That's inventory looking at every single family home in Port St. Lucie. But you can break it down by price point. You can break it down by location. You can break it down by HOA. You can break it down by does it have a pool or not? Is it on waterfront or not? There's all kinds of things you can break it down. I break it down one way. Right below, you can see up to 500 grand and 500 grand plus. And you can see and this is true probably in every single market, every single data point, it's better to sell or it's easier to sell or there's less inventory in that lower price point. Why? Because again, we go back to the median incomes. If you've got a, I don't know, $55,000 to $80,000 income, you can buy those lower priced homes under $500,000. If you're looking for a buyer who can afford something over 500 grand, that is an above average income, which literally means by definition, it's going to be more challenging to find. There aren't as many of them. So those homes will typically stay on the market longer for a lot of reasons. One reason is there's less buyers, right? Another reason, this is my opinion, is when you get a $350,000 buyer, they usually have a lot more motivation to buy than a $600,000 buyer. Because that $350,000 buyer, they might have to get their kids into school. They might have to get out of a lease. They might be getting kicked out of their mom and dad's place. They might have just gotten out of college, gotten that job, and now they got to get a house. The $600,000 buyer, in a lot of cases, not every case, can own their other home and buy a second home and worry about selling that first home later. That's not something a lot of people in the $350,000 price point can do. Again, it's not impossible. It's just statistically not what we see happening the majority of the time. A $600,000 buyer, in a lot more cases than a $350,000 buyer, can choose if they buy today, next month, 6 months from now, 2 years from now. When you get someone that's $350,000 to $400,000, typically they're going to buy, when they call me, we're buying in the next 2-3 weeks, usually. Not always, but usually. When I get a $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 plus buyer, sometimes those people are ready in 2 to 3 weeks. A lot of times, those are the people that'll look for 6 months, 8 months, 12 months. Again, it's not always, it's just a lot of times. So when you ask when is the best time to sell, there's really no stock answer that I believe a realtor should be giving you. They should be responding with questions like, what rough price point do you believe your home is at? Do you have a pool or not? Are you in an HOA? If so, which HOA? Right? Those questions can then tell me as a realtor, I'm not going to look at the whole Port St. Lucie single family home market. I'm going to look at Port St. Lucie single family home If you think you're roughly 500 grand, I'm going to look from 450 to 550. They have a pool and they're in this specific HOA. Now I can get a great inventory number that's going to be a lot more accurate. Because I'll tell you, I've talked to some folks in the last month or two, and one, I'm telling, hey, you've got 3 months of inventory in that price point and location you're looking in. And literally 2 days later, I'll tell someone else in Port St. Lucie, same city, hey, with the HOA you're in at the price point you're at, you've got 24 months. That was like last week I told somebody that. 24 months of inventory. Everybody wants to sell in your HOA. That's a challenge for you. So even if you go at market value, right? Let's say we've got all these comps. I think the comps for that particular person were right around 375. She said, can I try 385? I said, listen, you can do whatever you want, but even at 375, where I'm telling you comp support, there's so much inventory in your HOA, and there are so few sales that even at market value, the odds of you selling over, say, a 6-month period are probably less than 50%. So you've got to ask yourself what your motivation is. If you have to get out of here, like it's a divorce or, something like that, you might need to be at 360, 365. Not because comps show that that's what it's worth, but because you have the motivation to get out of here. And with the amount of inventory on the market, that's your only option. You're trying to attract that one buyer for the 48 homes for sale that's going to pop by every 2 months or whatever it is. I didn't do the math there. So you've got to be a top home out of 48 to have that one opportunity every month or two if you're in that HOA at that price point. Now, if you go back to 2021 and I tell you, hey, all the comps support 375, and you say, hey, can we try 385? I'll say, absolutely. Because right now we're getting 4, 5, 6 offers on every single home. And honestly, the price doesn't even matter. I could list it at 100 grand and they're going to beat each other up all the way up to whatever it's going to sell. It's going to sell. I guarantee it. That type of market's much different. This market right now, you can sell in, but you need someone who is sharp with the data, who knows the market, who knows all the different markets, who knows how to look up these numbers and to be able to communicate to you exactly what you're looking for. It's very important. It's very important. So again, last year, the best quarter was July. The second best quarter was April, right? The beginning of the quarter. This year, let's look. January was 197 days. That's horrendous. That's absolutely not going to be the best. April was 183. That's probably going to be the second worst. July was 166. So again, it's the best so far. And then when we go to October, you can't see it here, but it's 158. So actually, I'm sorry, did I say it wrong? 158. No, that's right. So actually, the fourth quarter was the best, then the third, then the second, then the first, which is different from last year. So if a realtor is just point blank telling you, hey, this is the time that's the best to sell, this is the time that's best to sell, and they're not explaining some of this data, they're probably not looking into this data, then they're hurting you, right? Now, for a lot of you guys, it really doesn't matter when the best or worst time to sell is. You need to sell now. You need to sell. And I will say, when I sold in Minnesota, there were certain months where it was so cold out and there was snow on the ground. It was 20 below. And the amount of sales compared to inventory, your odds of selling were so low. It did not make sense certain months. It was a drastic difference between two different seasons, but that's because of the weather. We don't have that here in Florida. Right? Yeah, we got hotter weather in the summer. We got cooler weather in the winter, but it's not drastic. People aren't saying, hey, it's too hot to go out and buy a house. Nobody says that. I've literally never heard anybody say that. You just put on a pair of shorts and flip-flops and you get inside under the AC, right? It's not a problem here. So I usually tell people, hey, 90% of people, it's not going to matter what I say. They need to sell in the next week or two, or they need to get on in the next week or two. But if you're truly trying to time the market, there's no realtor that can just tell you, because look at this. This year, again, fourth quarter's the best, third's the second best, second's the third best, and the first quarter was the worst. Last year, it was much different. Meaning 2026, I have no clue. I know what the typical Florida pattern looks like. I know typically it goes up in April, sales. And typically they start to come down in July and are really down there in September. I know that, right? So it's got that little hump. But I don't know what Homes for Heroes is going to do. I don't know what rates are going to do. I don't know what prices are going to do compared to average incomes. I don't know what incomes are going to do. There's a lot of things that are unknown. So no realtor can give you that information wholeheartedly. I can make guesses all day long. I really can. But I would say, typically speaking, the one thing that we do know is a typical market. And I'm talking about a typical home. I'm not talking about an oceanfront condo. I'm not talking about a townhouse. I'm talking about your 3 or 4 bedroom, 2 bath, 1-story home, maybe even a 2-story home that's in that, say, 350 to 550 range. Typically, you're going to see the most amount of sales and the best inventory numbers in that second and third quarter. But again, that doesn't take any of those other variables into consideration, what you want to do. So I don't know if I helped here or if I confused you more, but hopefully you can see some of the data that your realtor should be looking at before they give you advice, before they give you numbers on your home, and honestly, before they give you a pricing strategy. I can find supporting data to show you that your home is worth $500,000, but in 2021, I would tell you to start at a much different price than I would today, even though the comps support the same $500,000. Why? Because of the inventory levels and the amount of interest I know you're going to get from buyers based on that, right? So again, hopefully I didn't confuse you. Hopefully this was valuable. If you do find this valuable, I would love it if you subscribe to my channel. If you're watching this on Facebook or some other social media platform, not YouTube, I'd love you to go to YouTube, The Joe Rosen Show, and subscribe. That way we can get this out to more people and help more people. But thanks again for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful day. Have an even better weekend. Take care.